Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Siti Nur Shakira binti Nur Effendi. My metric number is 060272. Today I would like to presenting about war crime. So here we go.
What is a war crime? Serious violation of law that governs war, which give rise to individual criminal responsibility under international law. Set forth in the Hague and Geneva Convention, Hague Convention result in series of internal treaties that define crimes of war and set out certain rules of engagement in war, like like the crime against humanity. War crimes can also consist of such a violation act as a murder and torture. The only difference in the war crime act committed during wartime, and there must be an armed conflict. But crime against humanity can be committed in wartime and peacetime. Applies all to all sides, regardless of who start the war, cover all armed conflict, internal and non-internal. From the ICTY view, convicted of crime against humanity, grave breach of the Geneva Convention and violation of custom of war, sentenced to 20 years in prison. By Peter-Sandburg Declaration 1868, the only legit object which states should be endeavor to accomplish during war is to weaken military force of the enemy. There should only be enough force used be weakened military force in order to empower and the war. No exercise force should be used. Then there are be limitation on the means of warfare. Treaties, convention, regulation regulating that the use of poisons gas, bacteriological weapons, chemical weapon, and landmines. Okay, in order for individual criminal responsibility to occur, firstly, there must be an infringement of rule of international humanitarian law that brush off the international law limiting the use of force in violation conflict. In international humanitarian law, set of rules which seek to limit the effect of armed conflict. Source of law in war crime. Hague Convention 1899 and 1907, among the first formal statement of the law of war and war crime in international law, method and mean of warfare. Geneva Convention 1949, protection of civilians and soldiers, holistic combat. Additional protocol, first and second, weapons and other convention. In this war crimes, Nuremberg Charter, Article 6, Clause B, Geneva Convention 1949, hugely important. Four convention and three additional protocols includes the grave breach provision, expressly recognizing certain violation as crimes subject to universal jurisdiction. Then there are difference element between war crime and crime against humanity. Uh, Firstly, war crime may only be committed during the armed conflict, whereas the crimes against humanity can be committed both in wartime or peacetime as part of the widespread and systematic attack. Then, whereas crimes against humanity may only be committed against civilians, and most war crime may be committed against both civilian and enemy combatants. Crime against humanity must be widespread and systematic attack upon civilian population, not such requirement of war crime, and is selected that can quality as a war crime, but not as a crime against humanity. War crime and international humanitarian law are certain part can be defined, which is a war crime law criminalize violation of international humanitarian law. International humanitarian law is a set of rules seeking to limit the effect of armed conflict for humanitarian reasons. War crime and international humanitarian law are intertwined. The Geneva Convention expressly criminalizes violation of identified fundamental provision. Law of armed conflict. Okay, for centuries, international lawyers term law of war to cover two distinct areas. Just as Bloom, which is a law relating governing use of force or when it is lawful and unlawful to go to war. Just in below, uh, what which are the law governing actual conduct of hostilities or the specific rules relating to armed conflict. For example, Iraq War actually illegal because going to war in preemptive self-defense was not a lawful reason to engage in a war, was not authorized by Security Council. Following the World War II, the UN Charter prohibit the use of force in unless authorized by the UN Security Council or its self-defense against an armed attack. War crime in ICC statute. Firstly, Article 8, extensive list of 50 offences, including grave breach of Geneva Convention, serious violation of Common Article 3, and other violation from other source. Second, can be individual, isolated act, no need to be widespread or systematic, like crimes against humanity, and no requirement of special intent, for example, genocide. Uh, for that, must take only place in contact and or associated with armed conflict. Fourth, court has jurisdiction over war crime when committed as a part of a plan, policy, large-scale, and commission of such crimes. Uh, Lubanga, in the viewpoint of ICTR, the first case ICC pursued in this area. Lubanga convicted of abducting or recruiting children to use as child soldier. 2012 sentences to 14 years in prison. Okay, 2003 Baha Mausa, 26, hotel receptionist, died in custody in British Army in Basra, Iraq. Described as a appalling episode of serious gratuitous violence. During his detention, subject to 5 interrogation techniques which were illegal under the Geneva Convention and had also been banned by the British since 1975. 5 techniques were wall standing, hooding, and subjection to noise, food, drink, sleep deprivation. Mausa was also beaten badly. This technique also used in uh, 14 men taken by British force and held for 2 weeks in unknown place, subjected to this same technique.
Even wars have rules, and Russia has been accused of committing war crimes. But what is a war crime? There are internationally agreed laws and treaties like the Geneva Conventions which set out what is and isn't acceptable during a war. So a war crime would be deliberately attacking civilians, causing unnecessary suffering, destroying infrastructure which is key for survival like a hospital, using certain weapons like chemical or biological. There are also rules which mean that the sick and injured must be cared for. This also includes prisoners of war like soldiers. Inhumane acts like rape, torture, and the persecution of a mass group are also war crimes. Ukraine has now begun a war crime case against Russia using the International Criminal Court, the ICC. And if enough evidence is gathered, then arrest warrants could be issued to Russian military generals.
Example of war crimes. Firstly, crimes against person not taking part in hostilities, which are the sexual violence against women or men in internment camps. Second, the torture or inhuman treatment, including biological experiment. Then, crimes committed against enemy combatants, civilians through a prohibitive method of warfare, which are internationally attacking medical building or personnel, willful in criminal intent, causing great suffering, serious injury to body and health, like starvation and deprivation of outset for survival. Then internationally killing civilians prisoner, uh, using human shield to render certain area of inhuman from military operation, giving no quarter, which are killing enemy combatants rather than uh, taking them taking them as a hostage, then destroying civilian property. For the fourth, crime against enemy combatant, civilian involving the use of prohibited means of warfare, like using weapon to cause widespread injury, unnecessary suffering, secondary bombing, chemical weapons, poison, bacteriological weapons, use the landmines, and enlisting children uh, under 15 years old, like children soldier. Uh, in Dominic Owen, preview by ICC, he was a child soldier himself, rose through rank, and then perpetuated tribal crimes against civilians. His agreement was that he was a victim. His childhood was destroyed, and he was brainwashed. Conditions to carry out the crimes. No defenses in ICL, and this case trial ongoing. Okay, for the conclusion, in contrast to genocide and crime against humanity, war crime can be committed against a diversity of victims. Either combatants or non-combatants depend on the type of crime. In international armed conflict, victims include wounded and sick members of armed force in the field and at the sea, prisoner of war and civilian persons. In the case of a non-international armed conflict, protection is afforded to person taking to no active part in the hostilities, including members of armed conflict who had it who had laid down their arms and those placed host the combat by sickness, wounds, and detention or any other cause. In both types of conflict, protection is also afforded to medical and religious personnel, humanitarian workers, and civil defense